The air in Hangar Bay 1 tasted of hydraulic fluid and impending violence. Lieutenant Commander Kira Ashford stood on the raised platform, a study in composed stillness amid a sea of hostile stares. 1,000 sailors packed the cavernous space. Their faces were a mixture of contempt and curiosity. Above them, the overhead lights cast harsh shadows that turned the hangar into an arena. Fleet Admiral Richard Hawkins towered over her. His chest was a billboard of ribbons earned in wars that were now history lessons. His face was granite carved by decades of absolute authority. His hand was rising, not a gesture, a weapon. The backhand strike came fast, brutal, designed to humiliate rather than harm. But it never landed. Ashford moved. Her left hand intercepted his wrist with surgical precision. Her right hand struck his forearm. A nerve cluster collapsed under the impact. In the space between heartbeats, she had him, pivoting, locking, driving him down to the deck with the cold efficiency of a machine designed for violence. The Admiral hit the metal floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the sudden silence. 1.8 seconds. That was all it took. Ashford held him there, her knee pressed into his back. Her face showed nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just the absolute certainty of someone who had performed a calculation and executed it perfectly. Then she released him, stepped back, offered her wrists for the handcuffs that were already coming. The hangar bay held its breath. 1,000 people had just watched the impossible. An officer had neutralized a fleet admiral with the quiet, terrifying grace of a ghost. But that moment was still 48 hours away. The transport shuttle banked hard over the Pacific. Through the small porthole, Lieutenant Commander Kira Ashford watched the USS Valiant grow from a gray spear into a floating city. The carrier was the centerpiece of Operation Trident Fury, the largest naval exercise in a generation. And she was about to walk into the middle of it. She clutched the handle of her diagnostic kit, a heavy Pelican case filled with custom-built interfaces and hardened processors. To most people, it looked like standard issue equipment. To the right eyes, it was something else entirely. A toolkit built by someone who understood systems at a level that made manufacturers nervous. The shuttle touched down with a hydraulic hiss. The hangar deck was organized chaos. Flight crews swarmed around aircraft. Ordnance techs moved with practiced urgency. Junior officers barked orders that got lost in the roar of jet engines spooling up for the exercise. Nobody looked at Ashford as she descended the ramp. She was 28 years old, average height, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. Her utilities were standard issue. Her boots were broken in, but not worn out. Everything about her screamed unremarkable. That was the point. She moved through the crowd like water finding the path of least resistance. Her eyes tracked everything. Exit points, security cameras, the way people moved and grouped. Old habits from a different life. A life that officially did not exist. The Combat Information Center was 3 decks down. A pocket of pressurized calm in the controlled chaos of a warship preparing for action. Blue light bathed the room. It cast long shadows from the banks of monitors where sailors traced phantom signatures of simulated enemies. Lieutenant Eva Hartwell stood at the central command console. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the edge. Her face was drawn tight with the kind of stress that came from fighting a problem that refused to be solved. Lieutenant Commander Ashford. Hartwell's voice was sharp, professional, but there was an edge of desperation underneath. Here, Ashford's voice was low, calm. It cut through the background hum of electronic warfare. Hartwell turned. Her eyes scanned Ashford's unadorned uniform and the heavy case in her hand. Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe relief. Hard to tell. "You're the specialist Fleet Cyber Command sent." "I am." Hartwell gestured at the holographic display dominating the center of the room. A tactical map showed the entire battle group. 12 ships spread across hundreds of miles of ocean. 8 of them blinked angry red. The Aegis combat system won't sync across Battle Group Delta. New fire control software is rejecting legacy guidance systems. We've run every diagnostic in the manual. Nothing works. Ashford set her kit down. The sound was solid, final. It's a firmware handshake conflict. The new security protocols are treating the older hardware as a foreign threat. The system is protecting itself so aggressively it has severed communication with its own components. Hartwell blinked. Well, you diagnosed that from a verbal description? I've seen it before. Across the CIC Petty Officer Trent Calloway looked up from his console. He was 25, cocky, the kind of tech who had grown up with computers and thought that made him an expert. Ma'am, with respect, we've had 3 system administrators working this problem for 16 hours. If it was that simple, we'd have found it. Ashford's gray eyes settled on him. There was no heat in her gaze, just assessment. Did you check the authentication handshake protocols at the firmware level? That's beyond our clearance. It's not beyond mine. She opened her kit. Inside was an array of tools that definitely were not standard issue. Custom interface cables, hardened data taps, a ruggedized tablet that looked like it had been assembled from parts that did not officially exist. Hartwell watched her work. The cold reboot would fix this, but that requires fleet-wide authorization from Admiral Hawkins himself. He considers it an admission of failure. Ashford plugged a data tap into the main console. Her fingers moved across the holographic interface she projected from her device. Fast, precise, like a pianist who knew every note before her fingers touched the keys. I understand. Let me see the system logs. For the next hour, she worked in silence. The younger techs in the CIC watched her with growing fascination. She moved with an economy of motion that was almost hypnotic. No wasted movement, no hesitation. She did not ask for help. She did not offer explanations. She simply worked. Her mind was deep inside the ship's digital soul, following threads of code like a tracker following prints in snow. The problem was elegant, sophisticated, and incredibly stupid. A security feature that had become so paranoid it was choking the system it was supposed to protect. The fix would require rewriting authentication protocols line by line. It would take time they did not have. All hands, prepare for fleet-wide address from Admiral Hawkins, Hangar Bay 1, 0800 sharp. The announcement cut through the CIC like a blade. Hartwell went pale. That's in 10 minutes. He wants a status report. He wants this fixed. It won't be fixed in 10 minutes. Ashford did not look up from her work. Her voice was flat, factual. The patch needs to be compiled, tested in a sandbox environment, and deployed sequentially. Rushing it will crash the entire battle group network. You don't understand. Hartwell's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Admiral Hawkins is old guard. He thinks digital systems are a weakness. He'll end my career for this. Ashford finally looked up. Her gray eyes met Hartwell's. There was no sympathy in them, only a clear assessment of reality. The system doesn't care about your career, Lieutenant. It only cares about the code. She turned back to her console. Her focus was absolute. Tell the Admiral the specialist is working on a solution. Give him no timeline. In the corner of the CIC, partially hidden behind a bank of cooling equipment, a man in gray coveralls watched the exchange. Master Chief Donovan McCrae was 62 years old. His hair was steel gray. His hands were calloused from decades of maintenance work. To everyone on the ship, he was part of the furniture. The old janitor who had been assigned to the Valiant for 6 years. Invisible. Forgettable. But his eyes were sharp, and they lingered on Ashford with the weight of recognition. She moved like Nyx. The hangar bay was a cathedral of steel and tension. 1,000 sailors stood in formation. Their dress uniforms were crisp. Their faces were young. Most of them had never seen combat. This exercise was their chance to prove themselves. Admiral Richard Hawkins stood at the podium. He was 64 years old, a titan from a different era. His chest carried ribbons from conflicts that most of these sailors knew only from history books. Desert Storm, the Balkans, classified operations in places that did not officially exist. His voice was a low growl. Amplified by the ship's speakers, it became a physical thing that vibrated in the bones. They tell me our new systems are better, faster, smarter. His fist struck the podium, the sound cracked like thunder. I tell you they are fragile. They are a glass jaw waiting for the first real punch. He paced the stage, a predator asserting dominance over his territory. In my day, we navigated by the stars. We aimed our guns with our eyes and our experience. We did not hide behind lines of code written by programmers who have never tasted salt spray or felt the deck roll under their feet in a real storm. His eyes scanned the crowd, chips of blue ice in a face carved from granite. They found Lieutenant Hartwell standing at rigid attention near the front. Lieutenant Hartwell, report. The collective attention of 1,000 sailors shifted to her. She felt the weight of it like a physical pressure. Sir, her voice barely carried even with the microphone clipped to her collar. The specialist is working on a complex firmware issue. She advises that a solution is being implemented. Advises? Hawkins' laugh was harsh, grating. A specialist advises me. On my own flagship. Where is this so-called specialist? A path cleared through the crowd as if by magic. Two master-at-arms materialized next to Ashford. She had been standing quietly at the back, observing. Her diagnostic kit was at her feet. She showed no reaction to the summons, just picked up her kit and walked toward the stage. Her pace was deliberate, unhurried. The calm certainty of her movement seemed to infuriate the Admiral even more. She ascended the steps, stood before him. She was a foot shorter, but she met his gaze without flinching, without the slightest hint of intimidation. Lieutenant Commander Kira Ashford. Hawkins read her name tag with barely concealed contempt. A systems integration specialist. They sent me a computer technician to fix a billion-dollar combat system. Sir, the problem is not mechanical. Ashford's voice was even, clear. It carried across the silent hangar without amplification. It is a logic error in the security firmware. The system is protecting itself so aggressively that it has severed communication with its own components. To Hawkins, her technical explanation was an act of defiance, a deliberate attempt to confuse him, to undermine his authority with jargon. I don't want excuses, Commander. I want my ships ready to fight. Can you fix it, or are you just another piece of dead weight my Navy is forced to carry? I can fix it, sir, but it will take time. It must be done correctly. Time is a luxury I don't have. Hawkins stepped closer, invading her personal space. His voice dropped to a menacing growl that was somehow louder than his shouts. I give the orders here. I say when and how things get fixed. Your job is to say yes, sir, and execute. Do you understand me? Ashford held his gaze. She did not step back, did not look away, did not show even a flicker of the fear he was trying to instill. I understand the order, Admiral. Her voice was steady, final, but the system will not. Something broke behind Hawkins's eyes. 33 years of command, 33 years of absolute authority. And this woman, this computer technician, half his age, was contradicting him in front of his entire command. His discipline snapped like an overstressed cable. Get off my stage. His hand came up, not a dismissive gesture, a backhand strike meant to humiliate, to punish, to put this uppity young officer in her place. It was fast, brutal, and utterly unexpected. The crowd gasped as one, but the blow never landed. Ashford moved with a speed that defied her quiet demeanor. It was not a conscious decision, it was deeper than thought. A circuit in her brain that had been forged by 1,000 hours of training in places that did not officially exist. Her left hand shot up, not to block, to parry. Her fingers wrapped around his wrist, deflecting the strike inward, using his own momentum against him. Her right hand followed, a rigid strike to the radial nerve cluster on his forearm. Precise, surgical. His arm went numb, his fingers uncurled in shock. She pivoted. Her body flowed around his like water around stone. Her hand slid from his wrist to his elbow, locking the joint. Her shoulder pressed into his back, driving him off balance. She dropped her weight. The Admiral, the granite titan, stumbled forward. A precisely placed foot behind his ankle completed the technique. He fell, not with a crash, with a controlled, ignominious collapse. He landed on the deck on his hands and knees. His arm was twisted in a lock that brought a pained grunt from his lips. Ashford held him there, her knee pressed firmly into his back. 1.8 seconds. That was how long the entire sequence took. It was not a brawl. It was not even a fight. It was a demonstration of absolute terrifying efficiency. It was a scalpel dissecting a hammer. Then she released him, stepped back. Her expression was unreadable, as if she had performed a routine maintenance task rather than neutralizing a fleet admiral in front of his entire command. The hangar bay was silent, a profound, bottomless silence. The sound of 1,000 people forgetting how to breathe. They had just witnessed something impossible, something that should not have happened, something that would be told and retold until it became legend. Two master-at-arms rushed the stage. Their faces were masks of confusion and shock. They did not know whether to arrest her or salute her. Ashford saved them the trouble. She calmly placed her hands behind her back, offering her wrists for the restraints. She had followed one protocol, then broken another. Now she would follow the consequences. Chief Brooks Kemper approached with handcuffs. His hands were shaking slightly. He had been in the Navy for 26 years. He had never seen anything like this. Commander Ashford. His voice was hoarse. You are under arrest for striking a superior officer. You have the right to remain silent. I understand, Chief. The cuffs clicked closed around her wrists. The sound was final, absolute. As they led her away, her eyes briefly met Hartwell's in the crowd. The lieutenant's face was ghost white. Her expression was pure, unadulterated shock. Something else, too. Something that looked like awe. Admiral Hawkins climbed to his feet. His face was purple, not just with rage, with humiliation that went bone deep. In 33 years of command, he had never been challenged like this. Never been made to look weak. Never been brought low by someone he considered beneath him. His voice when he spoke was cold, controlled, more terrifying than his earlier rage. All advanced combat systems are hereby placed in passive mode. All vessels will rely on legacy backup systems for navigation, communication, and targeting. This fleet will prove that real sailors don't need computers to fight. Hartwell felt her stomach drop. He was intentionally crippling the battle group, proving a point, fighting a war against modernity itself. And the one person who might have stopped this catastrophe was being led away in handcuffs. The brig was a sterile box deep in the ship's belly, soundproofed, isolated, a place designed to hold people who needed to be forgotten for a while. Ashford sat on the edge of the narrow metal cot. Her hands rested on her knees. Her breathing was controlled, even. She was not panicked. She was not angry. She was calculating. She had run the variables, assessed the threat, and acted. The court-martial would be swift. Dishonorable discharge almost certain. The end of a career that had never officially existed in the way most people understood careers. It was a logical outcome, an acceptable one. The alternative had been to allow that loss of control to go unchallenged, to let a superior officer strike her without response. That was not discipline. Discipline was a two-way contract. She leaned back against the cold metal wall, closed her eyes, and allowed herself a moment to remember. Eastern Europe. 6 years ago, a night operation into a facility that officially did not exist. She had been 22 years old, young, hungry, convinced she was invincible. Her call sign then was Nyx, the Greek goddess of night, the shadow that moved unseen, the blade that struck from darkness. The mission objective was simple: infiltrate, upload a virus, prevent a weapons system from being activated. Simple, not easy. She moved through the compound like smoke. Her teammate Marcus provided overwatch from a position 200 meters out. His voice in her earpiece was calm, confident. Nyx, you are clear to the server room. 30 seconds. She worked fast, her custom device plugged into the system, code flowing through her fingers like music. The virus uploaded. The system locked down. Mission accomplished. Then the alarms. Someone had detected the intrusion. Not her physical presence, her digital footprint. Nyx, you have company. 3 hostiles converging on your position. East corridor. She ran. Marcus provided covering fire. The crack of his rifle was a metronome in the chaos. 1, 2, 3 shots. 3 hostiles down. But more were coming, always more. I've got your exit. Move. She moved. Marcus's position was compromised. He repositioned, provided covering fire from a new angle. The extraction point was 100 meters, 70, 50. Then the sound that haunted her dreams. A single shot, different caliber, Different direction. Marcus status. Silence. Marcus respond. Finish the work, Kira. His voice was weak, strained. She heard the pain in it, the finality. Always finish the work. She wanted to go back. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to save him. Negative, you complete the mission. That's an order. She ran, hating herself with every step. The extraction helicopter was waiting. She climbed aboard, looked back at the facility, knew Marcus was not coming out. Finished the work she had. Every mission since then, every line of code, every system she had fixed or broken or built from nothing. It was all finishing the work, honoring the ghosts who had died so she could do what needed to be done. A sound broke her from the memory. Footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy boots. Purposeful. The door opened. Master Chief Donovan McCrae stepped through. He carried a mop and bucket. The perfect camouflage. Just a janitor checking on the cells. Nothing unusual. The guard at the door did not even look at him twice. McCrae set down the bucket, approached the cell bars. His weathered face showed no expression, but his eyes were sharp, alert. Commander, you good? Ashford opened her eyes. A slight smile touched the corner of her mouth, the first real emotion she had shown since the arrest. I'm fine, Chief, just following protocol. Your protocol or theirs? They exchanged a look. Understanding passed between them without words. 6 years of working together. 6 years of maintaining cover. 6 years of being invisible while doing work that would never make it into official records. McCrae glanced at the door, making sure they were not being overheard. If things go south, you know I'll come for you. I know, but stay in cover. That's an order. He nodded, picked up his mop, went back to playing the role of the old janitor who had been on this ship so long. He was part of the bulkheads. But as he left, he spoke one more time. Quiet, for her ears only. Storm's coming, Commander. Real one. Space weather. Carrington signatures. Ashford's eyes sharpened. NORAD reports. They were calling it minor, but the signatures don't lie. This one's going to be bad. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone with that information. A Carrington-class coronal mass ejection, a once-in-a-century solar storm, named after the astronomer who documented the last one in 1859. That storm had knocked out telegraph systems across the globe, set fires in communication stations, painted auroras visible from the Caribbean. In 1859, the world ran on telegraph wires. In 2024, the world ran on microchips, computer systems, integrated circuits, all vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses from solar radiation. The advanced systems on this ship were hardened, shielded, designed to survive an EMP event. They were offline because of the firmware bug she had been trying to fix. But they would survive. The legacy backup systems Hawkins had ordered activated were not hardened. They were old, built before EMP protection was standard. If a major solar storm hit while those systems were active, they would be fried instantly. The ship would be dead in the water. Ashford stood, paced the small cell. Her mind was racing through scenarios, probabilities, outcomes. She needed to warn someone. But who would listen to a prisoner who had just assaulted a fleet admiral? Above her, the ship hummed with activity. Operation Trident Fury was launching on schedule. 12 ships, 8,000 sailors, steaming into the Pacific under legacy systems that were about to be hit by a storm they could not survive. The klaxons sounded, battle stations. The exercise was beginning. Ashford pressed her hands against the cold metal of the cell door, feeling the vibration of the engines through the steel. The ship was moving, building speed, heading into the storm, and there was nothing she could do but wait. In the CIC, Lieutenant Hartwell stood at her station. The tactical display showed the battle group spreading out, taking their positions for the war game. Everything was running on backup systems. Sluggish, old, but functional. Petty Officer Calloway was monitoring space weather data. It was a secondary duty, something junior techs got assigned when they needed to look busy. He glanced at the readouts, frowned. Lieutenant, the solar activity index just spiked. NORAD predicted a minor flare. We have alerts set up. It's routine. Ma'am, this doesn't look minor. Hartwell walked over, looked at his screen. The numbers were climbing. Not gradually, exponentially. Her mouth went dry. When did this start? 30 seconds ago. It's accelerating. In the maintenance bay, McCrae was alone. He pulled out the encrypted tablet he kept hidden in his tool locker, the one that was connected to systems the Navy officially did not acknowledge. The space weather data on his screen was worse than he had told Ashford. Much worse. The coronal mass ejection was massive, aimed directly at their position, and it was moving fast. Time to impact 9 minutes. He grabbed his radio, switched to the bridge frequency. Bridge, this is Master Chief McCrae, your man. We have an urgent space weather situation. Carrington-class CME incoming. Estimate 9 minutes to impact. We need to activate EMP-hardened systems immediately. There was a pause, then a voice, annoyed, dismissive. Master Chief, we have NORAD alerts. We're aware of the solar activity. It's been classified as minor. Return to your duties. Sir, with respect, the classification is wrong. The data shows. Master Chief, this is the officer of the deck. Stand down. That's an order. The line went dead. McCrae stared at the radio, then at his tablet. The counter was ticking down. 8 minutes. He made a decision, started running toward the brig. His old knees protested, his lungs burned. But he had been a Navy SEAL once a long time ago. His body remembered how to move when it mattered. The sky above the Pacific was changing, a sickly green glow spreading across the horizon. Beautiful, terrible. The aurora borealis visible at latitudes where it should never appear. On the bridge of the valiant Admiral, Hawkins stood at the windows, watching the exercise unfold. His pride was still raw, his authority challenged in a way it had never been before. But the fleet was performing well, proving his point. Real sailors did not need fancy computers. Then he saw the sky. His blood went cold. He had seen that color once before, 33 years ago, on a different ship, in a different war. Sir, the officer of the deck's voice was tight. NORAD is upgrading their alert. Major solar event incoming. They're recommending immediate protective measures. Hawkins turned. How long? 6 minutes, sir. The lights flickered, just once. A brief interruption in the steady flow of power. The first kiss of electromagnetic interference. In the brig, Ashford felt it. The slight dimming of the overhead fluorescent. The momentary hitch in the ventilation system. She pressed herself against the cell door, listening, feeling the ship's systems through the vibrations in the steel. Footsteps, running, coming closer. The door to the brig burst open. McCrae stood there. Chief Kemper was right behind him. Chief, I need her. McCrae's voice had changed. No longer the quiet maintenance man. This was a voice that had commanded men in combat, a voice that expected immediate obedience. Kemper looked torn. Master Chief, she's under arrest. I can't just... Brooks, McCrae used his first name, drew himself up to his full height. In 4 minutes, a Carrington-class coronal mass ejection is going to hit the ship. Every unshielded system on board will be fried. We will lose power, navigation, and propulsion. This ship will drift dead in the water toward reefs that have been sinking vessels for 200 years. The only person on this boat who can bring us back from that is in this cell. You can follow regulations and watch 8,000 sailors die. Or you can open that door. Choose. Kemper stared at him, saw something in the old chief's eyes, something that reminded him why he had joined the Navy in the first place. He pulled out his key card, swiped it through the lock. The cell door opened. Ashford stepped out. No surprise on her face. No questions. She grabbed her diagnostic kit from the evidence locker where it had been stored. How long? 3 minutes 40 seconds. Can we reach the system's integration hub? If we run. They ran. Kemper followed. Not because he had orders, because he understood that something bigger than regulations was happening. The ship's speakers crackled. An alert was being transmitted, garbled, interrupted by bursts of static. All hands brace for electromagnetic pulse event. Repeat, brace for... The transmission cut off. The sky turned white. The electromagnetic pulse hit the USS Valiant like the fist of an angry god. It was invisible, soundless, but its effects were immediate and catastrophic. Every light on the ship died. Emergency batteries kicked in, painting the corridors in blood red. The constant background hum of a modern warship vanished, replaced by an eerie, profound silence, broken only by the panicked shouts of sailors realizing something had gone terribly wrong. Ashford kept running, her diagnostic kit banging against her leg, McCrae and Kemper flanking her. They reached the system's integration hub, Ashford's workshop, the space where she had been working before the arrest. She dropped to her knees in front of the central access panel, pulled out tools. Her fingers moved with desperate speed. Chief status on the backup systems. McCrae checked a portable diagnostic unit. His face went gray. Fried. All of them. The EMP took out everything that wasn't hardened. Ashford's jaw tightened, but her hands kept moving, opening panels, accessing the protected core systems that had been offline. The advanced systems should be intact. The firmware bug that took them offline triggered a physical disconnect. It saved them from the surge. She pulled up system diagnostics. Green lights began appearing on her screen. One by one, the hardened systems were intact, sleeping, waiting to be awakened. But bringing them online was going to require a very specific, very dangerous procedure. Outside, the ship groaned, a deep, terrible sound. The sound of a 100,000-ton steel vessel losing its fight with the ocean. Without power to the engines, they were drifting, and the currents in this part of the Pacific were treacherous. Dead ahead, barely visible through the storm-darkened sky, were the Dragon's Teeth, a series of volcanic reefs that had claimed ships for centuries. The Valiant was drifting straight toward them. Ashford looked up from her console, met McCrae's eyes. I can wake the systems, but the power cascade is going to be dangerous. If I miscalculate, we could cause a feedback loop that will melt every circuit on this ship. If you don't try, we die on those rocks in 15 minutes. Your call, Commander. Ashford turned back to her console. Her fingers began to fly across the holographic interface. Time to find out if Nix could save a ship the same way she had once saved the world. One line of code at a time. The emergency lights painted the USS Valiant in shades of crimson and shadow. Ashford's fingers moved across her diagnostic interface with the precision of a surgeon operating on a beating heart. Around her, the ship groaned, metal stressed by forces it was never designed to handle. The ocean was patient, relentless, and it was winning. McCrae stood behind her. His weathered face was illuminated by the green glow of her screens. Chief Kemper guarded the door. His hand rested on his sidearm, not because he expected threats, because the gesture gave him something to focus on while the world fell apart. Status, Ashford's voice was clipped. Focused. McCrae checked his portable unit. Main reactor is stable. Secondary power grid is intact. The strategic weapon systems have independent shielding. They survived. Good, that's our power source. She pulled up a schematic of the ship's electrical systems, a three-dimensional web of conduits, injunctions, and failsafes that spanned 7 decks. The beauty of it was that every system was interconnected. The weakness was that every system was interconnected. I need a direct path from the secondary reactor to the primary distribution network. But every safety interlock is going to fight me. The system is designed to prevent exactly what I'm about to do, which is force a cold start of the primary grid by channeling the entire output of the weapons reactor through pathways that were never rated for that kind of load. McCrae's expression didn't change. He had known her long enough to trust her calculations, but even trust had limits. What are the odds this works? 60-40, if I've mapped the load distribution correctly. And if you haven't, we create a cascade failure that melts every power junction from here to the bridge. The ship becomes a very expensive artificial reef. Kemper spoke up from the door. Commander, we're moving. I can feel it. He was right. The deck had a subtle tilt to it now, the beginning of a drift that would only accelerate. Without power to the stabilizers, the ship was at the mercy of wind and current, and both were pushing them toward the rocks. Ashford's jaw tightened. She opened a comm channel. The internal network was dead, but her custom equipment had independent power, military-grade batteries that could run for 72 hours. Lieutenant Hartwell, if you can hear this, respond. Static, then a crackle. Commander Ashford. Hartwell's voice was thin, distant. She was using a handheld radio, battery-powered. Is that you? I need you in the CIC. Bring Petty Officer Calloway. Move now. Ma'am, I don't have authority to release you from custody. Chief Kemper released me under emergency protocols. Check your regulations, Lieutenant. Ghost protocol supersedes standard chain of command. There was a pause. Ashford could almost hear Hartwell processing that information. Ghost protocol was not something junior officers learned about in training. It was a code phrase, one that opened doors that were supposed to stay closed. Understood. We're moving. Ashford turned to McCrae. I need 3 people at power distribution junctions. Deck 3, Deck 5, Deck 7. They'll need to manually engage breakers in a specific sequence. 3-second intervals. Any deviation and we create a feedback loop. I'll take Deck 3. Kemper can handle 5. We need 1 more. Hartwell or Calloway, whoever has steadier hands. McCrae nodded, started toward the door, stopped, looked back at her. Commander, when this is over, people are going to ask questions about how you knew what to do, about why you have equipment that's not in any inventory, about who you really are. I know. Cover's blown. You understand that the cover was always temporary. The work is permanent. We finish the work. Something flickered across McCrae's face. Recognition, respect, maybe a touch of sadness. He had recruited her 8 years ago, fresh out of MIT, brilliant, driven, perfect for a program that officially did not exist. He had watched her become one of the best operatives in modern history, and he had watched the cost of that excellence carve itself into her soul. Finish the work. He repeated the phrase like a benediction. Then he was gone. Ashford was alone in the red-lit workshop, surrounded by the tools of her trade, the diagnostic equipment, the custom interfaces, the hardened processors that could crack encryption algorithms or bring a warship back from the dead. She closed her eyes for 3 seconds, allowed herself a moment of absolute focus, pushed away the fear, the doubt, the knowledge that she was about to attempt something that existed in the gray zone between engineering and prayer. Then she opened her eyes and got to work. The door bursted open. Hartwell stumbled in, followed by Calloway. Both of them were breathing hard. Their uniforms were disheveled. Hartwell's face was pale. Calloway looked like he was about to be sick. Report. Ashford's voice cut through their panic like a blade. Hartwell swallowed hard. The bridge is in case. Admiral Hawkins is on deck. He's not responding to anyone. The captain is trying to organize damage control teams, but we have no internal comms. Everything is runners and hand signals. How long until we hit the reefs? Calloway checked his watch. 12 minutes, maybe less. The current is stronger than we thought. Ashford pulled up a real-time positioning system on her screen. Her equipment had GPS access through a hardened satellite link. The image that appeared made her stomach drop. The dragon's teeth were a serrated line of volcanic rock jutting up from the ocean floor. The Valiant's drift was carrying them directly toward the center of the formation. 11 minutes. Lieutenant Hartwell, you're going to Deck 7. There's a power distribution junction near the aft emergency generator room. You'll see 3 large copper breakers labeled Alpha Bravo Charlie. When I give the word, you will engage them in a specific sequence. Understood. Yes, ma'am. Petty Officer Calloway, you're staying here. I need you to create a bypass loop on the main server network. It will fool the security systems into thinking we're running a diagnostic drill. Without it, every safety protocol will try to shut us down. Calloway's cockiness was gone, replaced by something approaching awe. Ma'am, I've never done anything like that. Then you're about to learn. She handed him a data tap from her kit, custom built, wrapped in heat-resistant shielding. Plug this into port 7 of the primary server stack. The interface will walk you through the rest. Don't deviate from the instructions. Every word matters. He took the device like it might explode, which, given the amount of current that would be flowing through the systems in a few minutes, was not entirely inaccurate. Hartwell headed for the door, stopped, turned back. Commander, why did they send you? Really, you're not just a systems specialist. Ashford met her eyes, held the gaze. I'm the person they send when the systems fail. Now move. Hartwell moved. Ashford turned to her console, began entering commands that would bypass 40 years of accumulated safety features. Every interlock was there for a reason. usually because someone had died learning why it was necessary. She was about to ignore all of them. Not out of recklessness, out of mathematical certainty that the alternative was worse. The ship shuddered, a deep, resonant groan that came from the hull itself. They had made contact, not a collision, just a scraping kiss against the outermost edge of the reef, a warning of what was coming. 10 minutes. Callaway status on the bypass loop. Almost there, ma'am. This interface is insane. Where did you get this? I built it. He looked up, stared at her. You built this? This is Tier 1 level encryption bypass technology. This is the kind of thing that's classified above my clearance. It's classified above most people's clearance. Focus on the work. He turned back to his screen. His hands were shaking slightly, but he was fast, competent. The cockiness had been a shield for his insecurity. Without it, she could see the skilled technician underneath. Her comm crackled. Commander McCrae, in position on Deck 3. Kemper here, Deck 5 ready. Hartwell, Deck 7. I'm at the junction. I see the breakers. Ashford took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where theory met reality, where calculation met chaos. All stations listen carefully. When I give the mark, you will engage breakers in sequence. McCrae, you're Alpha. 3 seconds later, Kemper, you're Bravo. 3 seconds after that, Hartwell, you're Charlie. The timing is critical. Too fast and we create a surge. Too slow and the cascade fails. Understood. 3 voices acknowledged. Steady, professional, trusting her with their lives and the lives of 8,000 sailors. Callaway is the bypass active. The system thinks this is a scheduled drill. Good. She gripped the 2 heavy insulated cables that would complete the main circuit. They crackled with contained energy, 50,000 volts waiting to be unleashed. On my mark, she positioned the cables at their connection points. Her heart was steady. Her hands were sure. This was what she had trained for, not the glamorous field operations, not the infiltrations and extractions. This, the moment when everything balanced on a knife's edge and only perfect execution would save the day. Mark, engage Alpha. She slammed the first cable home. The workshop exploded with light and sound. A massive surge of power roared through her back a step. The cable bucked in her hand like a living thing. Every light in the room flared to an impossible brightness. She counted. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Engage Bravo. A high-pitched whine filled the air. The sound of capacitors screaming as they were forced to take a charge they were never designed for. The smell of ozone was overwhelming. Sharp, electric. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Engage Charlie, now. She slammed the second cable home. The whine intensified, rising in pitch until it was a physical pain in her teeth and bones. The lights flickered, dimmed, and then died completely. Darkness, absolute and total. The silence was worse than the noise had been. It didn't work. Callaway's voice was hollow with defeat. Wait. Ashford stood in the darkness, her hands still gripping the cables, feeling the vibration through the insulated shielding. There was something, a resonance deep in the ship's electrical systems, like a heartbeat that had stopped and was trying to remember how to start. The hum began low, almost subliminal. Then it grew, strengthened, became the familiar background music of a modern warship. The lights flickered on, not the angry red of the emergency system, the steady clean white of main power. The ventilation system kicked in. Fresh air began circulating. Temperature control activated. On Callaway's monitor ship, systems began flashing from red to green, one by one. Navigation, communication, propulsion. Ashford released the cables. They dropped to the deck with a heavy thud. She leaned against the bulkhead. For the first time since the crisis began, she allowed herself to show exhaustion. Her hands were shaking. Her uniform was soaked with sweat. Callaway was staring at his screen in disbelief. It worked. Holy Mother of God, it actually worked. On the bridge, chaos transformed into controlled urgency. The main view screen lit up. It showed a terrifyingly close view of jagged volcanic rock off their starboard bow, less than 300 yards away. Helm is responding, someone shouted. The relief in that voice was profound. Propulsion online. All engines ahead full. The captain's voice cut through the noise. Hard to port. Get us away from those rocks. The massive turbines spun to life. The deck vibrated with their power. Slowly, agonizingly, the USS Valiant began to turn. Its stern cleared the final deadly rock by less than 20 feet. They were free. They were alive. In her workshop, Ashford allowed herself to breathe. Just breathe. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind the bone-deep weariness that came after every operation, every mission, every time she balanced on that edge between success and catastrophe. Commander, Calloway's voice pulled her back. How did you know that would work? She straightened, met his eyes, saw the question, then the confusion, the beginning of understanding that she was not who she appeared to be. I helped design the fail-safe systems when I was 22 years old, 3 years out of MIT, of youngest systems integration specialist the Navy had ever contracted. I wrote the protocols that just saved our lives. But that's impossible. Those systems are 8 years old. You'd have been... He did the math. His eyes widened. You were a prodigy. I was useful. The comm crackled. McCrae's voice. Commander, we have survivors. All teams reporting in. 0 casualties. You did it. She picked up her comm unit. The ship did it, Chief. We just gave her a chance to save herself. Copy that. You should know. Word is spreading fast. People are asking questions. Let them ask. She began packing her equipment. The crisis was over, but the reckoning was just beginning. There was no way to explain what she had done without revealing capabilities that were supposed to remain classified. The cover she had maintained for 6 years on this ship was shredded. Everyone from the captain down to the lowest seaman would want to know who she really was. The door opened. Hartwell stumbled in. Her face was flushed. Her eyes were bright with the intensity of someone who had just survived something impossible. Commander, the bridge is asking for you. They want an after-action report. They want to know... She trailed off, uncertainty on her face. They want to know how I knew what to do. Yes, ma'am. Ashford sealed her kit, stood, adjusted her uniform. The professionalism was a mask, but it was a comfortable one. She had worn it for so long, it felt natural. Tell them I'll report when I've completed my system diagnostics. The ship is stable, but we need to verify all critical systems before we can consider the crisis resolved. Hartwell nodded, but she didn't leave. Instead, she pulled out a tablet, one of the ruggedized units that had battery backup. Her fingers moved across the screen, accessing files that should have required multiple levels of authorization. I accessed your service record, Commander, using the emergency override codes. I know I could be court-martialed for it, but I needed to understand. Ashford's expression didn't change. And what did you find? Nothing. Your record is almost entirely redacted. Whole years are just black bars. The parts I can see make no sense. You're listed as a logistics coordinator, but you have security clearances that go beyond what most admirals have. You have commendations that are classified at levels I've never even heard of. She looked up from the tablet, met Ashford's eyes. Who are you? Dush. Ashford held the gaze. Made a decision. The cover was blown anyway. Might as well control the narrative. My operational call sign was Nix. Hartwell's face went blank. Processing, then recognition dawned. Horror and awe mixing in equal measure. Nix is a legend. Stories we tell in cyber warfare school. The operator who doesn't exist. The ghost who can break into any system. Who stopped a nuclear launch in Eastern Europe. Who prevented a war in the Pacific by infiltrating an enemy submarine base. Nix is a myth. Myths are useful. They keep people from asking the right questions. Calloway had gone pale. He was staring at her like she had grown a second head. Every technician in the fleet knows those stories, but no one believed they were real, and no one knew Nix was... He struggled for words. A woman, young, hiding in plain sight as a logistics specialist. Ashford finished for him. That was the point. The best place to hide is where people aren't looking. How long? Hartwell's voice was barely a whisper. I've been operational since I was 21 years old. That was 8 years ago. I've completed 43 classified missions in that time. Infiltrations, sabotage, system extractions, preventing conflicts before they start, the work that keeps wars from happening rather than fighting them. She opened her kit, pulled out a small object. It was a tool, compact, elegantly machined. Engraved on the side was a designation NYX Alpha 04. This is one of my primary interfaces, custom built for operations that require accessing systems that are supposed to be inaccessible. The Navy doesn't officially acknowledge that these devices exist, but they exist, and I build them. Calloway reached out, stopped himself before touching it. This is the tool from the stories, the credit card-sized device that stopped the nuclear launch. One version of it, I've built 17 different versions over the years, each one specialized for different scenarios. Hartwell was shaking her head, not in denial, in overwhelmed comprehension. The presidential unit citation in your file, the one that's classified above my clearance, that was for the Eastern Europe mission, wasn't it? Ashford's jaw tightened. The memory was never far away. Marcus, the gunfire, the weight of leaving him behind. Yes, 2018, I infiltrated an enemy command bunker, uploaded a virus to prevent the activation of a weapons system that would have triggered a regional war. The mission was successful. But my teammate didn't make it out. Marcus, he was my overwatch. He took fire covering my extraction. He died so I could finish the mission. The workshop was silent. The weight of that confession hung in the air. Hartwell spoke carefully. How many missions have you lost teammates? 7 over 8 years. Marcus, Elena, Torres, 4 others whose names are still classified even from me. And you kept going. I kept finishing the work. That's what they died for. To finish the work. McCrae's voice broke the moment. The door opened and he stepped through, still playing his role. The maintenance chief with the mop and bucket. But now everyone in the room understood that role was camouflage. Commander, we have a situation developing topside. What kind of situation? Well, the kind where 8,000 sailors just watched you save this ship. They're asking questions. The Admiral is on the bridge, the captain wants answers, and Fleet Command is trying to establish communications. This is going to get complicated very fast. Ashford nodded. She had known this moment would come eventually. Every deep cover operative did. The moment when the mission requirements conflicted with operational security. When saving lives meant revealing yourself. Chief, what's your assessment? McCrae's expression was neutral. Professional, but she could see the calculation behind his eyes. He was running scenarios, just like she had trained him to do, just like he had trained her all those years ago. Cover is compromised, no way to walk this back, but the mission was always temporary. You were placed on this ship to evaluate and upgrade combat systems. That mission is complete. Time to extract and reassign. Agreed. But first we need to ensure the fleet is stable. I need to verify all critical systems before we can consider this crisis resolved. Calloway interrupted. Ma'am, I have to ask. You said you designed these fail-safes when you were 22. But why? How does someone that young get access to core military systems? Because I was already operational. The NICS program recruited me out of MIT when I was 20. They saw my thesis on adaptive encryption systems, and they made me an offer. Join a program that officially doesn't exist. Use my skills to prevent wars before they start. The only catch was that I would cease to exist in any official capacity. And you said yes. I said yes. Hartwell looked at her with new understanding. You gave up everything. Your name, your identity, your life. Why, Ashford was quiet for a moment, thinking about Marcus, about Elena and Torres, about the other ghosts she carried, about the wars that never happened because of missions that would never be acknowledged. Because someone had to do the work, and I was good at it. She turned to her console, began running diagnostic sequences on the ship's restored systems. The conversation was over. There would be more questions later, debriefings, after-action reports, possibly investigations. But right now, there was work to do. Hartwell and Calloway exchanged glances. Some understanding passed between them. They had just been given access to a secret that most people in the military would never know. The knowledge that there were operators like Ashford, ghosts in the machine, protecting the fleet from threats that never made it into official reports. Ma'am, Hartwell's voice was formal, respectful. What do you need from us? I need you both to help me verify every critical system on this ship. Propulsion, navigation, weapons, communications, life support. We brought her back from the dead, but we need to make sure she's stable. Understood. They got to work, the three of them moving through diagnostics with practiced efficiency. Ashford directed, Hartwell and Calloway executed. Gradually, the picture became clear. The ship was alive, functional. All primary systems were operating within normal parameters. The hardened components had survived the EMP. The restoration cascade had worked exactly as calculated. McCrae watched from the doorway. His role was done for now, but he would be there when they needed him. That was what handlers did. They provided support, cover, and when necessary, extraction. An hour later, Ashford straightened from her console. The diagnostic sweep was complete. All systems nominal. The USS Valiant is operational. Hartwell smiled, a genuine expression of relief and something approaching joy. We actually did it. We saved the ship. You saved the ship, Commander, Calloway corrected. We just helped. Ashford shook her head. No, this was a team effort. I had the knowledge. But you had the courage to trust me, to act in every regulation said you shouldn't. That took a different kind of strength. The comm crackled, a new voice, one that carried authority. Lieutenant Commander Ashford, this is Captain Morrison. Request your presence on the bridge immediately. Ashford picked up her comm unit. Understood, Captain. En route. She looked at Hartwell and Calloway. Stay here. Continue monitoring the systems. If anything deviates from normal parameters, I want to know immediately. Ma'am. They both acknowledged. She walked toward the door. McCrae fell in beside her. They moved through the corridors in silence. Sailors parted for them now, not with fear, with respect. Word had spread. The lieutenant commander had done something impossible, had brought the ship back from certain destruction. Some of them nodded as she passed, a gesture of acknowledgement, of gratitude. She was no longer invisible, no longer just another officer in the crowd. She was becoming legend, and legends were dangerous things to be. The walk to the bridge felt different. Every sailor they passed in the corridors stepped aside, not out of obligation to rank, out of something deeper, something earned. The word had spread through the ship with the speed of wildfire. The lieutenant commander who had been arrested for striking the Admiral, the one who had brought the ship back from certain death. Her name was being whispered in tones usually reserved for war heroes. Ashford kept her face neutral, professional, but inside she felt the weight of exposure. For 6 years she had been invisible on this ship. Another systems specialist, competent but unremarkable. Now that camouflage was stripped away. Every eye that met hers held questions, curiosity, awe. McCrae walked beside her in silence. He had been through this before. The moment when an operative's cover dissolved and they had to decide whether to retreat into shadows or step forward into light. It was never an easy transition. They reached the bridge. The master-at-arms standing guard straightened. Commander Ashford, Captain Morrison is expecting you. She stepped through the pressure door. The bridge of the USS Valiant was the nerve center of a floating city. Banks of monitors displayed tactical data. Navigation stations plotted courses. Communications officers coordinated with the rest of the battle group. It was controlled chaos. Professional. Efficient. Captain David Morrison stood at the central command station. He was 56 years old, a career officer who had commanded destroyers and cruisers before being given the Valiant. His face was weathered by years at sea. His eyes were sharp, assessing. Admiral Hawkins stood near the forward viewports, his back to the room, staring out at the ocean. His posture was rigid. The set of his shoulders spoke of a man carrying unbearable weight. Morrison turned as Ashford approached. His expression was unreadable. Lieutenant Commander Ashford, your after-action report indicates that you executed an emergency power restoration using protocols that are not in any standard Navy technical manual. Care to explain? Ashford came to attention. Sir, I utilize advanced system integration techniques developed during classified research projects. The procedures were necessary to prevent catastrophic failure. Classified research projects. Morrison repeated the phrase carefully. Your service record is interesting reading, or rather, the parts that aren't redacted are interesting. The rest is just black bars, pages of them. He walked around her slowly, not threatening, evaluating. In the last 6 years, you've been assigned to 7 different vessels, never staying longer than 10 months on any of them. Always as a systems specialist. Always requested by name from Fleet Command. And in every case, you've somehow been present when critical technical failures occurred. Failures that you and only you managed to resolve. Sir, I was assigned where my skills were needed. Your skills. Morrison stopped in front of her. Lieutenant Hartwell accessed your file under emergency protocols. What she found was a presidential unit citation for operations in Eastern Europe, classified above her clearance, above mine, above almost everyone on this ship. He paused, let that information hang in the air. Except I made some calls to people I know at Compaq EFLT, and they made some calls. And eventually someone confirmed something I had only heard rumors about. There's a program, officially doesn't exist. Operators who work in the spaces between military and intelligence operations. They prevent wars before they start, stop threats before they materialize. They're called different things by different people. But the old-timers have a name for them. His eyes locked on hers. Ghosts. Ashford held his gaze. Said nothing. Confirmation would be a breach of protocol. Denial would be a lie. Morrison's expression softened slightly. You saved this ship, Commander. You saved 8,000 lives. Whatever classified operations you're involved with, whatever program you represent, that's above my pay grade. But I need to know one thing. Was this ship a mission for you? Were we just an assignment? No, sir. This ship was my cover. My real mission was evaluating and upgrading fleet combat systems, identifying vulnerabilities before enemy actors could exploit them. The Valiant was supposed to be routine. 6 months of systems integration work, then extraction and reassignment. Supposed to be? Yes, sir. The solar storm was not part of the plan. Neither was Admiral Hawkins's decision to rely on unshielded backup systems. The crisis was real. My response was not part of any mission parameters. It was simply the right thing to do. Morrison nodded slowly. Fleet Command is sending a priority communication. Encrypted. For your eyes only. It arrived 10 minutes ago. I think they want to talk about what happens next. He gestured to a private communication station. Ashford moved to it, placed her palm on the biometric scanner. The screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was Admiral Margaret Reeves, commander of Pacific Fleet, one of the few people in the Navy who knew exactly what the NICS program was and what its operators did. Commander Ashford, SITREP. Ma'am, USS Valiant is operational. All critical systems restored. 0 casualties from the EMP event. Fleet composition is stable. We are ready to resume operations. Reeves paused. Commander, your assignment to the Valiant wasn't random. We identified the firmware vulnerability months ago. We knew Hawkins would resist advanced systems. We placed you here to evaluate whether Ghost Protocol could function when operational security was compromised. Ashford's expression didn't change, but inside pieces clicked into place. The crisis was real, but you ensured I was here to handle it. Correct. You paused the evaluation, Commander. That's why you're approved for Tier 1 command. Ashford felt something twist in her chest. Extraction, new assignment, new cover, new ship where she would be invisible again. It was the nature of her work, but something about leaving the Valiant felt wrong, unfinished. Ma'am, request permission to remain on station until full system evaluation is complete. The crisis exposed vulnerabilities in our EMP protection protocols. I can implement upgrades across the battle group. Admiral Reeves studied her through the screen. Negative. Your operational security is more valuable than the upgrades. We have other specialists who can handle the technical work. You're approved for Tier 1 operational command. Report to JSOC in 30 days for briefing on your next assignment. It was not a request. It was an order. Understood, ma'am. One more thing, Commander. The incident with Admiral Hawkins, the physical altercation. That's being handled at the fleet level. Self-defense protocols are being invoked. Your record will reflect no disciplinary action. Hawkins has submitted his own report taking full responsibility for the confrontation. That was unexpected. Admirals did not typically take responsibility for anything, especially not public humiliations. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. Thank Hawkins. He's the one who wrote the report. Reeves out. The screen went dark. Ashford sat in the silence of the small communications booth. Processing. Tier 1 operational command meant bigger missions, more dangerous assignments. The kind of work that had a mortality rate that kept climbing with each passing year. She thought of Marcus, of his last words, finish the work. She always did. When she emerged from the booth, Morrison was waiting. You're being extracted. Yes, sir, but not immediately. I'll remain on board for another 72 hours to complete my technical assessment. Understood. He paused. For what it's worth, Commander, this crew respects what you did. They know you saved them. That means something. Thank you, sir. She turned to leave. Admiral Hawkins was still standing at the viewports, staring out at the ocean. She could walk away, avoid the confrontation. But something made her stop, made her approach. Admiral. He turned slowly. His face was different. The rage was gone, replaced by something rawer, more honest, shame, regret, the weight of 33 years of carrying ghosts. Commander Ashford, I owe you more than I can express in words. Sir, you owe me nothing. I did my duty. No, his voice was firm. You did more than duty. You saved this ship when I had condemned it. My pride, my arrogance, my refusal to adapt, all of it nearly killed 8,000 sailors. And you stopped it. He looked down at his hands, as if seeing them for the first time. I need to tell you something about why I hate the technology, why I've spent 3 decades fighting it. Ashford waited. This was his moment, his need to confess. 1991, I was a captain, commanding officer of the USS Vincennes. We were in the Persian Gulf. Tensions were high. Our Aegis system detected an aircraft approaching, fast, high. The computers identified it as a threat, an enemy fighter. Every indicator said hostile. His voice cracked slightly. I gave the order to fire. 2 missiles, both hit. The aircraft went down. We thought we had just prevented an attack on our ship. He closed his eyes. The pain was etched into every line on his face. It was Iranian Air Flight 655, a civilian airliner, 290 innocent people, men, women, 66 children, all dead because I trusted the computer, because the system told me it was a threat and I believed it without question. The bridge had gone silent. Everyone was listening now. This was not a story that was supposed to be told. It was classified, buried, the kind of tragedy that got locked away in sealed files and never spoken of in public. The Navy cleared me, said it was a system failure, said I followed protocol, but I knew the truth. I had put my faith in a machine that I didn't understand, and people died because of it. He looked at Ashford. His eyes were wet. I swore I would never trust computers again. Never let technology make decisions that cost lives. But I was wrong. I overcorrected. I rejected all of it. And that rejection nearly caused another tragedy. You showed me that the problem wasn't the technology, it was my ignorance, my refusal to learn, to adapt. Ashford felt something shift inside her. This man had been carrying a ghost for longer than she had been alive. A ghost that had poisoned every decision he made, every judgment about the modern Navy. Sir, permission to speak freely. Granted. The men and women who died on Flight 655, they didn't die because you failed. They died because a system was flawed, because training was inadequate, because the fog of war is real and sometimes impossible to see through. You followed your training. You made a decision based on the information you had. The outcome was tragic, but it was not your fault. Hawkins shook his head. You're being generous. No, sir, I'm being accurate. I've read the classified reports. I've studied the incident as part of my training. The Aegis system had known issues with altitude discrimination, the IFF transponder confusion, the pressure of combat conditions. All of it contributed. You were one man in a chain of failures. Don't carry that weight alone. I've carried it for 33 years. I don't know how to put it down. Then let me help you. Don't let those 290 people die in vain. Learn from it. Teach others. Make sure the next generation understands the technology they're using. That's how you honor them, not by rejecting progress, by making it better. Hawkins was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened, drew himself to his full height, raised his hand to his brow in a formal salute. It was the salute of profound respect, the kind a soldier gives to a hero regardless of rank. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as a fleet admiral saluted a junior officer. Commander Kira Ashford, you have my respect, my gratitude, and my apology for my actions in the hangar bay, for my arrogance, for nearly destroying this fleet with my pride. He held the salute. Ashford returned it crisply. Sir, I accept your apology, and I offer my own. I should not have struck you, regardless of provocation. I lost control. That was a failure of discipline. You stopped me from making a mistake that would have had consequences far beyond a bruised ego. That was not a failure. That was courage. He lowered his salute, extended his hand. Ashford took it. The handshake was firm, final, a contract between warriors. I'm recommending you for promotion to full commander, and I'm requesting you be assigned as technical advisor for fleet-wide system integration. Your insights are too valuable to waste. Sir, I'm being reassigned. Higher command. Understanding flickered across his face. Of course you are. They can't let someone like you stay in one place too long. You're too valuable, too dangerous, too good at what you do. He released her hand. Then let me say this. In my 38 years of service, I've met a lot of sailors. Good ones, bad ones, mediocre ones, but I've never met anyone like you. You're what the Navy should be. Smart, capable, brave, and humble enough to do the work without needing recognition. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. Captain Morrison spoke up. Admiral Commander, if I may, the crew has been requesting permission to assemble. They want to acknowledge what happened here today. Hawkins nodded. Granted, Hangar Bay 1 hour. Ashford felt her stomach tighten. Another assembly, another moment in front of the entire crew, but this time would be different. The next hour passed in a blur of technical work. Ashford moved through the ship with Hartwell and Calloway, checking systems, verifying repairs, making notes on vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed. McCrae shadowed them, still playing his role. The maintenance chief who was always there but never noticed. When the time came, they walked to the hangar bay together. The space that had been the scene of her arrest, the place where she had taken down an admiral in front of 1,000 witnesses. Now it would be the scene of something else. The hangar was packed again, but the mood was different. No hostility, no contempt. The sailors stood at attention. Their faces showed respect, gratitude, understanding. Admiral Hawkins stood at the podium, Captain Morrison beside him. As Ashford entered, the entire assembly snapped to attention, 8,000 boots striking the deck in unison. The sound was like thunder. Hawkins's voice carried across the space. At ease. The crew relaxed, but their eyes remained fixed on the stage, on Ashford as she walked toward it. 48 hours ago, this ship faced annihilation. A solar storm of unprecedented magnitude struck us while we were operating on unshielded backup systems. Every prediction said we would be dead in the water, drifting onto rocks that have claimed ships for centuries. 8,000 lives were moments from being lost. He paused. Let the weight of those words settle. One officer saved us. Lieutenant Commander Kira Ashford. She executed a technical procedure so dangerous, so unprecedented, that no manual in the Navy's entire history describes it. She brought this ship back from certain death, and she did it while under arrest, while facing court-martial, because she put the mission above herself, the crew above her career, duty above everything. He turned to Ashford. Commander stepped forward. She moved to center stage, stood at attention, waiting. By the authority vested in me as Fleet Admiral, I am promoting you to the rank of full commander effective immediately. Your actions over the last 48 hours demonstrate leadership, technical excellence, and courage under fire. The Navy is proud to have you in its ranks. He produced a set of oak leaf insignia, the rank of commander. Pinned them to her collar with hands that were steady despite everything. The hangar erupted in applause. not polite clapping, a roar of approval that shook the bulkheads. Sailors whistled, cheered, stomped their feet. This was recognition from people who understood what she had done, who knew that without her, they would all be dead. Ashford stood rigid, professional, but inside something was breaking. She had spent 8 years being invisible, being nobody, and now she was being celebrated. It was disorienting, overwhelming. Hawkins raised his hand. The crowd quieted. There's more. Commander Ashford operates under a classification level that prevents me from discussing the details of her service. But I can say this. She has served this nation in ways most of us will never know, in places we will never hear about, against threats we will never understand. She is one of the silent guardians who keep us safe while we sleep. And today she saved all of us. He stepped back, saluted her again. The entire crew followed suit, 8,000 hands raised in perfect unison. Ashford returned the salute. Her face was composed, but her eyes held a brightness that had not been there before. She had carried her ghosts alone for so long. And now in this moment she felt seen, acknowledged, valued. The ceremony concluded. The crew dispersed, but many of them approached her as she left the stage. Young sailors, experienced chiefs, officers from every department. They shook her hand, thanked her, told her their stories, where they were when the power died, what they thought in those dark minutes, how grateful they were to be alive. She listened to each one, accepted their thanks with grace, but inside she was counting the hours until extraction, until she could disappear again into the shadows where she belonged. That night, McCrae found her on the observation deck, the highest point on the ship, a small windswept platform that was usually deserted. She was sitting on a storage locker, her diagnostic kit open beside her, performing her ritual, the complete disassembly and cleaning of her primary tools. He watched her work for a few minutes without speaking. The precision of her movements, the focus. This was her meditation, the place where the chaos of operations resolved into order. You did good work, Commander. She didn't look up. I did the only work available. That's what Marcus used to say, before every mission, just doing the work. Her hands paused for just a moment, then resumed their careful cleaning. You trained him too, before me. I did. He was one of the best. Until you. I'm not better than he was. You're alive. He's dead. That makes you better. She set down the tool she was cleaning, looked out at the dark ocean. The stars were brilliant overhead, unobscured by city lights or clouds. I dream about him sometimes, about that night. I replay it over and over, looking for the moment where I could have changed the outcome, where I could have saved him. There was no moment, you know that. He made his choice. He died so the mission could succeed. That was his decision, not yours. Doesn't make it easier to carry. No, it doesn't, but you honor him by continuing, by finishing the work. That's what he wanted. McCrae sat down beside her, pulled out a flask, took a sip, offered it to her. She shook her head. I'm retiring, Kira. After this deployment, 40 years is enough. My knees are shot, my back hurts, and I'm tired of watching young operators go into situations that get some of them killed. She looked at him sharply. You can't retire. You're my handler, my anchor. You don't need an anchor anymore. You need to fly. The work is getting bigger, more complex, more dangerous. You're moving into Tier 1 operations, black sites, deep penetration missions, the kind of work where handlers are a liability. You need to be autonomous. I don't want to be autonomous. I need someone who knows the real me, who understands the cost. You have that. Hartwell, Calloway, the crew of this ship, they know you now. They've seen what you can do, and they respect it. Build your network, find your people, but don't rely on an old man who's ready to grow tomatoes and forget about classified operations. She smiled despite herself. You're going to grow tomatoes. And peppers, maybe some zucchini. I've got a place picked out in Montana, middle of nowhere, no neighbors, no classified briefings, just dirt and sunshine and peace. I can't picture you at peace. Neither can I, but I'm going to try my... They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, the ocean, the distant lights of other ships in the battle group. What's the next mission? McCrae asked. I don't know yet. Report to JC in 30 days. They'll brief me then. But Admiral Reeves said it was Tier 1. That usually means nation-state threats, nuclear materials, bioweapons, the nightmares that keep presidents awake. You ready for that? I'm never ready. I just do the work. McCrae nodded, stood with a groan, his knees protesting. Then let me give you one last piece of advice, from an old handler to his best operator. The ghosts you carry, Marcus, Elena, Torres, the others, they're not haunting you, they're guiding you. Every mission you complete, every crisis you solve, every threat you neutralize. You're finishing the work they started. That's not a burden. That's a legacy. He walked to the hatch, stopped before going through. And Kira, you're not alone, not anymore. You have a team now. Use them. Trust them. Don't make the mistake I made. Don't carry everything yourself. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with her tools and her thoughts and her ghosts. 3 months passed. Commander Ashford completed her assignment rotation, briefed at JSOC, received her new operational parameters. The work was exactly what McCrae had predicted. Dark, dangerous, critical. But something had changed. She had a team now. Hartwell had transferred to Cyber Warfare Command. Calloway had been accepted into warrant officer training, both of them cleared for classified operations support, both of them available when she needed expertise or backup, or just someone who understood. The call came on a Tuesday. Encrypted burst transmission to her secure phone. Priority alert. Cyber attack on Pacific Fleet. Sophisticated. State actor level. Multiple penetration vectors. Origin unknown. She was on a transport within 2 hours, flying west toward Pearl Harbor, toward the USS Valiant, toward the team that had proven themselves in fire. The ship looked different in daylight, larger somehow, more real. She walked up the gangway with her kit. No ceremony this time, no fanfare, just another officer reporting for temporary duty. Hartwell met her at the hangar deck, now a lieutenant commander herself. Her uniform was crisp, her bearing was confident. Commander Ashford, good to see you. Good to see you, Hartwell. Status on the intrusion. This way. They walked through corridors that were familiar now. Sailors nodded as she passed, recognition without fanfare. She was no longer a mystery, just another skilled operator doing necessary work. The CIC was exactly as she remembered. Blue light, banks of monitors, the controlled chaos of a combat information center during operations. Calloway was at a console, now a warrant officer, his cockiness replaced by quiet competence. Commander, thanks for coming. This one's bad. Someone punched through our outer defenses like they weren't even there. They knew exactly where to look, what protocols to bypass. It's like they had inside knowledge. Ashford studied the intrusion signatures on the screen. Her mind was already working, analyzing, comparing to databases of known threat actors and techniques. Then she saw it, a specific pattern in the attack code, a signature she had encountered before, years ago, in a different theater, against a different target. This is Moscow, 2nd Directorate. I've seen this signature before, 2019, when I was tracking weapons smuggling networks in the Balkans. Hartwell's eyes widened. You're saying this is Russian intelligence? I'm saying someone trained by Russian intelligence. This signature is unique, specific, and it means they're not just attacking random targets. They're hunting for something specific. What? Ashford met her eyes, saw the question there, the beginning of understanding. They're hunting for me, for Nix. Someone figured out that Nix was real, that Nix was active, and they're trying to draw me out. Calloway looked up from his console. Then this is personal. Everything is personal eventually. Ashford set down her kit, opened it, started pulling out her tools. But they made a mistake. They attacked the Valiant. That means they don't know I have a team now. They think I'm still operating alone. She looked at Hartwell and Calloway, at the CIC crew who were listening with rapt attention, at the ship that had become something more than just another assignment. Time to show them what happens when you pick a fight with a ghost who's not alone anymore. Hartwell smiled, a fierce expression that promised violence to anyone who threatened her ship. What do you need? I need full access to fleet network logs. I need satellite tracking data for the last 72 hours. And I need both of you to help me trace this back to its source. Because we're not just defending, we're going hunting. Over the next 6 hours they worked. Ashford directed the operation with the same quiet competence she had shown during the EMP crisis. But now she had skilled operators supporting her. Hartwell handled the network forensics. Calloway managed the satellite data correlation. Together, they peeled back layers of obfuscation and misdirection. The trail led to a ship, civilian registration, currently operating 200 miles west of Hawaii. On paper, it was a research vessel. In reality, it was a signals intelligence platform, and it was currently transmitting data that matched the intrusion signatures. That's our target, Ashford pointed at the satellite image. Whoever is running that ship knows about Nix, knows about my operations, and they're trying to identify me. We need to stop them before they succeed. How? Calloway asked. Ashford's smile was cold, dangerous, the smile of someone who had spent 8 years operating in the shadows. We do what Nick does best. We go dark, we infiltrate, and we shut them down before they know we're there. She looked at Hartwell. Can you get me authorization for a tactical insertion? For you, after what you did for this ship, I can get you anything. 2 hours later, Ashford was in a helicopter, flying low over dark water. Her tactical gear was black, lightweight, equipped with tools that officially didn't exist. Hartwell and Calloway were back on the Valiant, providing overwatch and technical support. This was what she did, who she was, the ghost in the machine, the operator who moved unseen and left no trace. But for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't alone. She had people watching her back, people who understood the plan, people who would help her finish the work. The helicopter descended toward the target ship. Ashford prepared to fast rope down. Her heart was calm, her mind was clear. This was familiar territory. Dangerous, but familiar. Nix, you are cleared for insertion. Hartwell's voice in her earpiece. Steady, confident. Copy, going dark. She dropped into the night, silent, invisible, a ghost with a mission. But this ghost had something new, something she had never had before. A team, a family, people who would be there when she came back, who would help her carry the weight. The work continued, it always would, but she wasn't carrying it alone anymore. And that made all the difference. The ship grew closer in the darkness. Ashford checked her gear one final time. Everything was in place, everything was ready. She thought of Marcus, of Elena, of Torres, of all the ghosts she carried. Finish the work. She always did. The helicopter reached its position. The crew chief gave the signal. Ashford grabbed the rope and dropped into the night, into the mission, into the work that never ended. But as she descended toward the enemy ship, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, something that Marcus had tried to teach her before he died. Hope. Not that the work would get easier, not that the ghost would fade, but that she didn't have to carry them alone anymore. That there were people who understood, who would stand with her, who would help her finish what others had started. The rope played out beneath her hands. The ship grew larger. The mission began, and Commander Kira Ashford, callsign Nix, became a ghost once more. But this time she had something the shadows had never given her before, a reason to come back. The infiltration took 12 minutes. Ashford descended onto the target ship's aft deck. Silent, invisible. The crew was focused on their intelligence gathering. They didn't see the ghost moving through their corridors. The server room was 3 decks down. Ashford bypassed electronic locks with tools that had no official designation. No alarms, no alerts, just the quiet click of mechanisms yielding to someone who understood them better than their designers. She plugged her interface into their primary server. The system thought it was running diagnostics. It was wrong. Her countervirus uploaded in 42 seconds. It would take their analysts 3 days to realize they'd been compromised. By then, every piece of intelligence they'd gathered would be corrupted, unusable. Mission complete. Ashford extracted the way she'd entered, like smoke through cracks. The helicopter crew chief pulled her aboard. The aircraft banked hard away from the target. Behind them, the enemy vessel continued its work, unaware it had just been neutralized. Nix, this is Hartwell. We tracked your progress the whole time. Clean work, Commander. Ashford's voice was steady in her throat mic. Thanks for the overwatch. Heading home. We'll have coffee waiting. The return flight took 40 minutes. Ashford used the time to disassemble and clean her primary interface. The ritual calmed her, brought order to the chaos of operations. By the time the helicopter touched down on the Valiant's deck, her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. Hartwell and Calloway were waiting in the hangar bay, both of them in working uniforms, both of them trying to look casual, failing. Commander, Hartwell's voice was carefully professional, but there was relief underneath. Debrief in 30 minutes. Make it an hour. I need a shower and real coffee. Calloway grinned. The mess has a fresh pot. Chief McCrae made sure of it before he left for the day. They walked through the corridors together. The ship felt different now. Not foreign, familiar. Home was too strong a word, but it was closer than anything Ashford had felt in 8 years. The debrief was quick, professional. Hartwell and Calloway had tracked every move through satellite and signal intercepts. They'd been ready to extract her if things went wrong. They hadn't needed to, but knowing they were there had changed something. Ashford realized she had worked differently, faster, more confidently, because she knew someone was watching her back. A week passed. Ashford remained on the Valiant, completing her technical assessment, implementing upgrades across the battle group, training Hartwell and Calloway on advanced techniques that weren't in any manual. On her last night aboard, she found herself on the observation deck, the familiar windswept platform where she'd spent so many quiet hours. Her diagnostic kit was open, the tools laid out in precise order, but she wasn't cleaning them tonight, just looking at them. Footsteps on the deck. Ashford turned. A young woman in utilities approached hesitantly. An ensign, 22, 23 at most. Her name tag read Rodriguez. Commander Ashford, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Ensign Maria Rodriguez. I just transferred aboard. Cyber warfare specialist. Ensign. Rodriguez shifted her weight, nervous. Ma'am, I heard what you did during the EMP crisis. The guys in my unit, they don't take me seriously. They think I'm just a tech, that I can't handle real operations. I was wondering if... She trailed off. Ashford studied her, saw herself 8 years ago, young, hungry, desperate to prove herself to people who had already decided she wasn't enough. You want to know how to make them respect you? Yes, ma'am. Ashford was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to Hartwell, who had appeared in the hatchway, silent, observing. Lieutenant Commander Hartwell, this is Ensign Rodriguez. She's interested in advanced cyber warfare techniques. Hartwell stepped forward, assessed Rodriguez with the same calculating look Ashford had once given her. Is she now? I think she has potential, but she needs someone to teach her, someone who understands what it's like to be underestimated. Understanding passed between Ashford and Hartwell, a torch being passed, a legacy being continued. Hartwell's expression softened slightly. Ensign Rodriguez, report to the CIC at 0600 tomorrow. Bring your personal laptop and any custom tools you have built. We're going to see what you're capable of. Rodriguez's face lit up. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. She saluted crisply and left. Her steps were lighter, her shoulders straighter. Hartwell moved to stand beside Ashford at the rail. They looked out at the dark ocean together. The stars were brilliant overhead. You're leaving tomorrow. Hartwell's voice was matter-of-fact. Transport at 0800. Will we see you again? When the work requires it, the Navy has a way of putting me where I'm needed. Hartwell nodded. For what it's worth, Commander, thank you. For everything you taught us. For trusting us. For showing us what's possible. Ashford glanced at her. You don't need me anymore, Eva. You and Calloway are ready. Rodriguez will be your responsibility now. Train her the way I trained you. What if I'm not ready to be someone's mentor? You weren't ready to save a ship either. But you did it anyway. That's what we do. We do the work that needs doing, whether we feel ready or not. They stood in comfortable silence. The ship hummed beneath their feet, alive, functional. Proof that the work mattered. The ghosts, Hartwell said quietly, the ones you carry, Marcus and the others. Do they get easier? No, but they get quieter, and eventually you realize they're not haunting you. They're guiding you. Every mission you complete, every person you save, every operator you train, you're finishing the work they started. Ashford picked up her diagnostic kit, sealed it. The ritual was complete. I spent 8 years being alone, being nobody, carrying everything by myself because I thought that's what the work required. I was wrong. The work doesn't require isolation. It requires trust. And I'm still learning how to do that. She turned to face Hartwell fully. Thank you for teaching me. Hartwell's eyes were bright. We didn't teach you anything, ma'am. We just gave you a reason to stop hiding. The next morning, Ashford stood in the hangar bay, her kit at her feet. The transport helicopter was spooling up. McCrae had already left the ship, retired to his Montana farm. Calloway was on duty in the CIC, but Hartwell was there, and Rodriguez, and a dozen other sailors who had worked with her during the crisis. They didn't salute, didn't make a ceremony of it. Just quiet nods, acknowledgement between professionals who had done impossible work together. Ashford climbed aboard the helicopter, found a seat, strapped in. As the aircraft lifted off, she looked down at the Valiant. The ship was already moving, returning to operations. Life continued. Her secure phone buzzed. Encrypted message from JSOC. New assignment, new mission. The work never stopped. But as she read the briefing, Ashford realized something had changed. The message included a note. Recommend coordinating with Lieutenant CMDR Hartwell for technical support. Warrant Officer Calloway approved for communications oversight. She wasn't being sent alone anymore. She had a team, a network, people she could trust. Ashford closed her eyes, let herself feel the vibration of the helicopter, the weight of her kit against her leg, the familiar anticipation of a new mission. Marcus's voice in her memory. Finish the work, Kira. Always finish the work. She would. She always did. But now she understood what he had really meant. The work wasn't just about the missions. It was about building something that lasted, training the next generation, creating a legacy that would continue long after she was gone. The work continued. The torch was passed. The ghosts were honored. And Commander Kira Ashford, call sign Nix, was no longer alone. The helicopter banked toward the rising sun. Ashford opened her eyes, looked at the horizon, at the endless blue stretching before her. She thought about Rodriguez, about Hartwell teaching her the way Ashford had taught Hartwell, about the chain continuing, the legacy growing. That was how it survived, not in medals or commendations, not in classified files that would never be read. In quiet moments, one generation teaching the next. The work passing from hand to hand. Ashford allowed herself a small smile. Marcus would have approved. She pulled out her tablet, began reviewing the mission briefing. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't carrying it alone. And that made all the difference.